10 years ago, Ilara and David first crossed paths at work. He was a promising project manager at a bustling construction firm, his days filled with blueprints and deadlines. She, a gifted interior designer, brought life and colour to the very buildings his company erected. Their connection was immediate, a spark igniting amidst the dust and dry wall. They fell in love, and soon they were married, promising forever in a sun-drenched ceremony. Their initial years together were a blissful whirlwind, painted with the vibrant hues of new love. Then came Ethan, their son, a tiny miracle who filled their small, cosy apartment with laughter and the sweet scent of baby powder. David continued his ascent in the construction world, while Ilara, after her maternity leave, built a thriving freelance business. She found her artistic calling in transforming the grand, impersonal spaces of wealthy clients into sanctuaries, her brushes dancing across walls and ceilings, creating murals that inspired tales of beauty. They made their home in David's modest downtown apartment, a place of cherished memories, though David's mother Brenda often encouraged them to move to her spacious, charming house in the nearby suburbs. Brenda, a woman with a warm smile and a knack for making anyone feel at home, frequently extended the invitation, but Ilara and David, fiercely independent, politely declined. They craved the freedom of their own space, their own rules. This wasn't due to any animosity. In fact, Ilara and her mother-in-law shared a remarkably close bond. Ilara regarded Brenda not just with affection, but with profound respect. She would patiently listen, absorbing Brenda's wisdom on everything from perfecting a classic lasagna to nurturing the most delicate orchids. Lately, however, a shadow had fallen over Brenda's vibrant spirit. She'd been in and out of the hospital a few times, and Ilara's heart ached with sympathy for the kind, resilient woman. Yet amidst this concern for Brenda, Ilara couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was shifting between her and David. Their relationship, once so effortlessly warm, seemed to be cooling, the vibrant colours of their early love beginning to fade into muted tones. Ilara racked her brain, searching for a reason, any reason, for this growing distance. There were no grand arguments, no accusations, no glaring infidelities, just a quiet erosion of the easy intimacy they once shared. She tried to reassure herself, whispering comforting lies in the quiet hours of the night. This is normal, she'd tell herself. Every marriage has its ups and downs, its challenging seasons. There's nothing truly alarming about it. David, for his part, gave her no reason to doubt his faithfulness. Still, a hollow ache settled in her chest, the painful realization that something vital was slowly slipping away from their life together. Then came the crescendo, a blaring alarm bell in the quiet symphony of their lives. Brenda's upcoming milestone birthday. Ilara threw herself into planning, poring over online catalogues and visiting countless stores, determined to find the perfect gift. After much deliberation, she settled on a state-of-the-art kitchen mixer, knowing how much Brenda adored cooking. In her youth, Brenda had even been a celebrated chef at a popular bistro, and now her home kitchen was a perpetual laboratory for culinary innovation, where she conjured up new and extraordinary dishes daily. What truly startled Ilara, however, was David's sudden announcement that he planned to leave early that morning before the rest of them. "What do you mean?" Ilara asked, her brow furrowing. "Ethan was so excited to wish Grandma a happy birthday. He practiced his drawing, memorized a poem." "He can celebrate with her another time." David cut her off, his voice flat, devoid of his usual warmth. But that wasn't the only unexpected news. As everything was ready and they were about to leave, David dropped another piece of beautiful news. Ilara, let's agree on something, okay? I'll give her the gift myself, from both of us, and you won't come inside. What are you talking about? Ilara stammered, confusion clouding her eyes. Why wouldn't I go in? Why would I wait outside? What's so difficult to understand? David retorted, a hint of exasperation in his tone. I'll go in, wish her a happy birthday, and you can wait for me in the car, not out on the street. Can't you just do this one simple thing for me? He fell silent, clearly annoyed. Of course I can, Ilara replied, her voice laced with bewilderment. But I don't understand why I can't wish Brenda a happy birthday. She'll be offended. Are you hiding something from me? The question hung in the air, a fragile whisper of suspicion. Of course I'm hiding something, David scoffed, a tight, humourless smile playing on his lips. I've got 5 girlfriends in there, all sitting around Mum's table. Don't be ridiculous. Mum's just not feeling well. She called me and said she's not up for visitors, not up for anything. She didn't even invite anyone. But I can't just not stop by at all, Ilara countered, a sense of unease growing in her stomach. But there's absolutely no reason for you to go inside, David insisted, his voice firm. She doesn't want you to. Does that answer satisfy you? Not entirely, Ilara said, pressing her lips into a thin line. But if she truly doesn't want anyone inside, then fine, I'll wait. David parked the car a few houses down, a subtle manoeuvre that didn't escape Ilara's notice, and then strode into his mother's house. Ilara remained in the car, waiting, a knot of apprehension tightening in her chest. Growing bored and needing to stretch her legs, she stepped out of the car. Her gaze drifted and then caught on something new, a vibrant cluster of freshly planted impatiens beneath the kitchen window. Brenda, Ilara remembered, had always been as passionate about cultivating beautiful flowers as she was about creating delectable dishes. Ilara drifted toward the vibrant flower bed, nestled right beneath the kitchen window, drawn by the splash of colour. She was admiring the freshly planted blooms, their petals still dewy, when Brenda's voice, laced with incredulity, drifted through the open window. You're saying what, David? That simply can't be true. Ilara has always been so respectful, so grounded. Are you absolutely certain? You're not mistaken? Yes, Mum, 100%, David's voice replied, devoid of any hesitation. And don't look so surprised. It happens more often than you think, especially after 10 years of marriage. So many couples hit different kinds of crises around this mark. It seems we haven't escaped it either. You know how heartbroken I was when I found out she was seeing someone else. I'm actually considering divorce. This is why I didn't bring her today to celebrate with you. Oh my goodness, how dreadful! Brenda gasped, her voice thick with shock. Ilara, rooted to the spot like an ancient oak, felt her own breath catch in her throat. She was ready to cry out, to scream, to unravel right there on the pristine suburban lawn. What is he saying, she thought, her mind reeling. How could I possibly have a lover? I haven't given him the slightest reason, not even a whisper to doubt my loyalty. An uncontrollable urge seized her, a fierce need to burst into the house and shout, "Why are you lying?" But she fought it down, a cold wave of self-preservation washing over her. Slowly, silently, she backed away from the window, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She slipped back into the car, a hollow shell, attempting to compose herself, to wait for her husband. Of course, Her first instinct was to confront him, to demand answers, to shake the truth out of him. But then another thought surfaced. David would accuse her of eavesdropping, of being suspicious. It seems I'll have to keep quiet for now, she decided, the words a bitter taste in her mouth. But later, I don't even know what will happen. Somehow the truth will come out. What's going on? Who's deceiving whom? And if he's decided to divorce me and is trying to shift all the blame onto me, that will become clear rapidly. Finally, David emerged from the house, a picture of casual nonchalance, a man without a care in the world. His mother didn't come out to see him off, which struck Ilara as odd, given their close bond. As David settled into the driver's seat, Ilara said nothing about what she had heard. Instead, she asked, her voice surprisingly steady, how Brenda was doing, and if she liked the mixer. "Oh, everything's fine," David replied, dismissing her with a careless wave of his hand. She said thank you. His offhand response offered no clarity, no reassurance, and any gentle probing from Ilara only met with similar vague answers. Maybe I imagined it, she thought, clutching at a desperate hope. But how could a sane person lie so brazenly to their own mother, and on her birthday of all days? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. That evening, unable to shake the unsettling feeling, Ilara decided to call Brenda herself to wish her a happy birthday personally. But Brenda's phone rang and rang, stubbornly unanswered. Yet Ilara distinctly remembered hearing Brenda's voice on the phone with David earlier. She must really believe I'm a traitor, Ilara thought, a fresh wave of hurt washing over her, knowing how strongly her mother-in-law felt about infidelity. Just then, Ethan came home from school, and the sight of his report card sent another jolt through Ilara. A failing grade in conduct. What happened? Ilara asked, her brow furrowing with concern. What did you do? It's not my fault, Mum, Ethan replied, his lower lip trembling slightly. You know how some of the kids in our class have wealthy parents? Like Jake and Noah and a few others. Everyone bends over backward for them, even the teacher. They think they can get away with anything. So they pick on me and the other kids who don't jump for them. And somehow we always end up being the ones blamed. All right, Ilara declared, a new resolve hardening her gaze. I'll go to your school myself and figure out what's going on. Her son's distress momentarily pushed the bewildering conversation she'd overheard to the back of her mind. Of course, she reasoned, a child's problems must come first. My own marital issues can wait. The next morning, Ilara walked to school with Ethan, her steps determined. She explained the situation to his teacher, a weary-looking woman with tired eyes. But the teacher, instead of acknowledging Ethan's side, simply shook her head. I'm sorry, Miss Miller, but that's simply not true. Your Ethan is mistaken. No one is picking on him. We have a very harmonious class. In fact, your son sometimes initiates conflicts with other children, calls them names, and then complains. Frankly, it's not very becoming. I have to disagree with you, Ilara countered, her voice firm, defending her son. I believe my child. He has never been the first to hurt anyone. He's always been honest, always fair. The teacher sighed, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation, but seemingly powerless to change anything. I understand, and I agree. He's a good boy. But as you know, children change. Perhaps his behaviour is a way of hiding other problems. I don't know what other problems you're referring to, Ilara stated, a steely edge to her voice, realising that arguing was futile and she couldn't change the school's dynamics. But if this continues, we'll have no choice but to transfer him to a different school. You know, the teacher suddenly said, her voice softening slightly, That might truly be the most sensible decision. I promise I won't hinder you in any way, and your son will receive the very best recommendation. Ilara left the school, her heart sinking deeper with each step. As if her personal turmoil wasn't enough, now her son's life was also in disarray. Ethan, who had always been a model student, both in behaviour and academics, was struggling. What am I supposed to do now? She wondered, a knot of despair tightening in her chest. Do I really have to confront David with a serious conversation? It wasn't that she feared the talk itself, she just didn't want more complications. First, she needed to sort things out with Ethan, and then perhaps she'd face the whirlwind of her own life. And work, of course, was relentless. In light of recent events, Ilara decided she might have to work even harder. Their entire life as a couple was now hanging by a thread, and if David's bewildering charade led to a divorce, she'd be solely responsible for supporting herself and her son. The next morning, Ilara headed to a new client's home. It turned out to be a young doctor, Dr. Julian Vance, a kind-faced man with a quiet demeanour who wanted a whimsical mural painted in his little daughter's bedroom. Ilara discussed his vision, then, curious, asked what the little girl's mother might wish for. The woman, for some reason, wasn't there. "We don't have a mum," Dr. Vance said softly, his voice tinged with a delicate sorrow. "It's just Lucy and me. My wife passed away 3 years ago." "Oh, please forgive me," Ilara exclaimed, startled, her hand flying to her mouth. "I had no idea." "No, please forgive me," he replied gently. "I should have warned you. And don't worry too much. We've come to terms with the loss. We're used to living this way, just the two of us." Ilara began her work, her brushstrokes fluid and confident, while engaging Dr. Vance in light conversation, drifting to impersonal topics. She noticed the slight shadow that crossed his face when his wife was mentioned, and decided to steer the conversation gently away from painful memories by sharing a little about herself. She mentioned her 8-year-old son Ethan, and even briefly touched on his recent school troubles, then asked about Dr. Vance's work. And then, in a strange twist of fate, a truly astonishing coincidence unfolded. Dr. Vance, it turned out, worked at the very hospital where her mother-in-law Brenda had undergone examinations and treatments multiple times. He knew Brenda well. Given this unexpected connection, Ilara, her heart pounding with a fresh wave of concern, couldn't help but ask about the health of the woman she considered family. She wanted to know her prognosis, her chances for the near future. Dr. Vance's expression grew sombre. "Judging by her latest test results, it's not good," he admitted, his voice grave. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but your mother-in-law doesn't have more than 8 months left to live." "What?" Ilara gasped, her voice barely a whisper, her heart clenching with a fresh wave of sympathy, not only for Brenda but also, surprisingly, for David. "No! Is there really nothing that can be done?" "Unfortunately, there are cases where medicine is simply powerless," he said, shaking his head slowly. "More than that, frankly, it's a wonder she's held on this long, but she's clearly a woman of incredible will. She knows her condition, but she hasn't despaired or given up." "So that's what this is," Ilara cried out, a new, complex emotion swirling within her. Sorrow for Brenda, and a growing confusion and anger towards David. She couldn't fathom why he would deliberately shock his dying mother with a false story about a potential divorce on her birthday. Brenda, no doubt, had been distraught, believing her son, and now, in such a fragile state, additional stress was the last thing she needed. Determined to reassure Brenda, Ilara rushed to her mother-in-law's house after work. She rang the doorbell, but Brenda, recognising who it was, refused to open the door. For what felt like an eternity, Ilara stood on the porch, tears streaming down her face, pleading, begging to be let in for just a moment. Finally, the door slowly creaked open. "You know, Ilara, I've always treated you well," Brenda said, her voice laced with pain and disappointment. "Loved you like my own daughter, trusted you more than David, and then to find out something like this, you betrayed my son." "Brenda, that's not true," Ilara cried, her own voice thick with tears. "I've always loved you, and I always will, and David too. I've never, not once in our entire marriage, looked at another man." But the elderly woman, her face etched with sorrow and a lifetime of hard-won wisdom, seemed inclined to believe her son, not Ilara. She simply didn't want to talk any more. "That's enough, Ilara, please go," Brenda said, her voice weak but firm, her gaze pointing towards the door. "I don't feel well. I need to rest. As for how you and David sort things out, that's your business. But don't forget, you have a son growing up." Ilara had no choice but to leave, her heart heavy, her pleas to convince Brenda of her innocence falling on deaf ears. On her way home, as Ilara walked past a cosy cafe with large inviting windows, her breath hitched. Through the glass she saw him, David, seated at a small, intimate table, his head close to a young woman, their hands clasped tenderly across the tabletop. They were laughing, a picture of carefree intimacy that shattered Ilara's carefully constructed calm. A terrible, cold clarity began to descend. So, he is cheating on me after all, and the malicious fabrication about her to his mother. It clicked into place with a horrifying logic. The thing was that a few years ago Brenda had transferred ownership of her house to Ilara. She really loved her daughter-in-law, but she didn't trust men. Besides, she wanted to take care of her grandson this way. David knew about Brenda's will, and it was the only rational explanation for such a cruel deception, to make Ilara appear faithless, to ensure Brenda would alter her will and disinherit her. He clearly planned to divorce Ilara and marry this younger, vibrant woman. Waiting until evening for a serious confrontation at home, to lay bare all she knew, felt pointless. David would undoubtedly deny everything, twist the narrative, make her out to be the crazy, jealous wife. Instead, a flash of reckless defiance sparked within Ilara. She walked into the cafe unnoticed and slipped into the back room. Finding an unsuspecting waitress, she whispered a request, fabricating a story about a little prank for a birthday celebration, needing an apron to play along. The young woman, charmed by the idea, readily agreed. Ilara quickly donned the uniform, her heart a drumbeat against her ribs, and approached the table where David was still engrossed in his flirtatious conversation. He was so completely absorbed he didn't even recognize his own wife. Choosing her moment with precision, Ilara accidentally tipped a steaming cup of coffee onto David's lap. He yelped, leaping up in a flurry of exclamations, his face contorted in outrage. He began to loudly berate her, threatening dire consequences for both the clumsy waitress and the entire establishment. But then, as he finally looked up, his furious gaze met hers. Recognition, then shock, washed over his features. "Ilara, what is this charade?" he exclaimed, his voice laced with stunned disbelief. "This," she retorted, her voice trembling but steady, "is the end of your charade. I understand everything now." Her eyes burned with a mixture of pain and a fierce, new-found resolve. You deliberately lied about me to your mother, didn't you, so she'd change her will?" A bitter, mirthless laugh escaped her. "I can set your mind at ease, don't worry. The house will still go to you. I don't need it." And with that, she turned and hurried out, refusing to let her cheating husband and his paramour witness the tears that were now streaming down her face. Back home, the full crushing weight of her fractured marriage settled upon her. Knowing it was irrevocably broken, she began to gather her and Ethan's belongings, her movements methodical, despite the emotional earthquake inside her. "Mum, what are you doing?" Ethan asked, his voice puzzled as he watched her pack. "Are we going somewhere?" "Yes, sweetie, we have to leave," Elara said, her voice soft but firm, though she had no clear destination in mind. Staying another moment in the same apartment as the man who had so cruelly betrayed her was unthinkable. Mid-packing, Dr. Vance's call came. He informed her that Brenda had been admitted to the hospital with a sudden, severe flare-up of her condition, most likely triggered by extreme stress and emotional distress. Despite the painful conflict that had just unfolded between them, Elara immediately dropped everything and rushed to the clinic, where Dr. Vance met her himself. "Don't worry, the immediate danger has passed," he reassured the distraught woman, his eyes kind. "And please try not to worry yourself. I can see you've been crying a lot." "Yes," Elara confessed, a raw honesty in her voice. "But not just because of Brenda. My whole life just suddenly started falling apart. I'm getting a divorce. We're leaving right now, my son and me, but I honestly don't know where we'll go. I almost wish we could just stay here at the hospital. Maybe you have some spare room where we could spend the night? Then tomorrow morning Ethan and I could find somewhere to live." "Are you serious?" Dr. Vance asked, his brow furrowing with concern. Then a thoughtful expression settled on his face. "You know, I think that's a bad idea. If you're in such a position, please, come to my place. You and Ethan can stay with us for a while, and then you can find something permanent." Elara flushed, embarrassed by his unexpected generosity, yet overwhelmed with gratitude. "Oh, we wouldn't want to inconvenience you." No, of course not." Dr. Vance gently interrupted her, a small smile playing on his lips. "My apartment is big, you've seen it, and besides, you'll be working there, painting Lucy's room," he reminded her. Elara felt awkward accepting such an offer from someone she barely knew, but desperation left her no choice. She and Ethan arrived at Dr. Vance's apartment, where Ethan quickly met Lucy, his own age. The children immediately connected, and Lucy, with an air of shared understanding, confided that she was having similar problems at her school. "Yeah, I guess it's like that everywhere," Lucy said, her voice quiet. "We also have kids with rich parents who always pick on us, and the principal protects them and scolds us." "I think we just need to get back at them," Ethan declared, a spark of mischievous determination in his eyes. "Tell you what, tomorrow I'll come to your school, and when they start bothering you, I'll record everything on my phone, then I'll upload it to the internet. Let everyone know what they're really like." Elara, meanwhile, knew nothing of the children's budding plans for revenge. Her days were a blur of visiting Brenda in the hospital, meticulously decorating Lucy's room, and preparing for the daunting process of divorce. David wasn't bothered in the slightest by his wife's departure, nor by the divorce papers Elara served. He was, in fact, quite pleased. He was certain his mother would now rewrite her will in his favour, and soon he'd be able to sell her house. With that money, he envisioned lavish trips to expensive resorts with his mistress, showering her with opulent gifts. Meanwhile, Ethan's audacious plan had worked. His video, uploaded to the internet, had gone viral, creating a huge uproar. Thanks to its widespread exposure, the school principal was removed and a new, more understanding person took their place. For a while, Ethan became a minor hero at school. This unexpected turn helped the boy navigate the difficult waters of his parents' divorce, a separation that, despite everything, he worried about deeply. The divorce itself proceeded rather quietly. Ilara received nothing in the settlement, but she barely cared. The most important thing was that this chapter of her life, poisoned by deceit and betrayal, was finally closed. A new love was already blossoming in her heart, a gentle sunrise after a long, dark night. Living in the same apartment had undeniably drawn her closer to Dr. Julian Vance. One evening, Dr. Vance confessed his feelings, a tender admission that filled Ilara with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. He then proposed, and Ilara, her heart overflowing with a quiet joy, accepted. "And by the way," he said, a twinkle in his eye, "I have some wonderful news that might surprise you. Your former mother-in-law, Brenda, isn't dying." Ilara's eyes widened. "What?" "She's sick, yes," he continued, "but not nearly as gravely as we initially believed. It turns out there was a mix-up with the lab results. She's going to live many, many more years." Ilara genuinely rejoiced at this news. Despite their recent conflict, she had never wished Brenda ill. A few weeks later, after Brenda had returned home from the hospital, Ilara found the courage to visit her. She rang the doorbell, her heart in her throat, unsure what kind of reception she'd receive. This time Brenda opened the door, her eyes still a little tired but clear. There was a moment of silence, then Brenda's face softened. "Ilara," she said, her voice raspy but warm, "Julian told me everything, about David, about his lies. I'm so terribly sorry. I doubted you." Tears welled in Ilara's eyes as Brenda pulled her into a tight, comforting hug. "My dear, I should have known. You are, and always have been, like a daughter to me." The two women sat for hours, talking, crying, and finally truly healing the rift David had created. For David, however, the revelation that his mother was alive and relatively healthy was a devastating blow. Suddenly, the inheritance he'd so ruthlessly schemed for vanished. No house sale meant no luxurious resorts, no expensive gifts. When his mistress caught wind of his sudden lack of prospects, she swiftly moved on to a more financially secure suitor. David was left with absolutely nothing. His carefully constructed future crumbled around him. He attempted to reconcile with his ex-wife, calling Ilara with a tone of casual familiarity, but Ilara's response was firm, unequivocal. "David, what are you doing? It's over between us." Then, with a proud, confident smile in her voice, she added, "And actually, I'm getting married soon. My wedding is just around the corner. And there's going to be another baby." It was the absolute truth. Ilara and Julian were married in a quiet, heartfelt ceremony, blending their families into a happy household with 2 children and eagerly anticipating the arrival of their third.